Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Friday. We are at the end of the week. The weekend is very nearly here. I hope you're having a good one wherever you are watching or listening to this around the world. A bit of a case of after the Lord's Mayor's show this weekend, isn't it, with Arsenal versus Brentford in the Premier League. Almost hard to get up for that after what happened in midweek. And of course, what is to come next week in Madrid. But it is the Premier League. It's an important game. It's a game that Arsenal need to win to try and keep momentum up, to try and secure their spot as definitely runners-up in the Premier League this season. So it is important. We will talk about that a little bit later on in the show. Look at maybe some of the decisions that are facing Mikel Arteta with that looming large. What do you do against Brentford? Do you rotate a little bit? We'll talk about that in today's show as well. Plenty of other things we're going to talk about. Kai Havertz, we're going to talk about Edu, who said his goodbyes, finally ended his gardening leave and officially has now left Arsenal, and he said a big goodbye on his Instagram yesterday. So we'll talk about that as well. A few other bits and pieces to get stuck into. I hope the connection's right. As you know, I'm away at the moment. I didn't do anything yesterday. I didn't do a show yesterday. Wanted to do one today. The connection really not great here, Wi-Fi wise, and it keeps coming up. Maybe it's a little bit unstable. So if it is a bit glitchy, I'm sorry. Not really anything else I can do at the moment, but I hope it's watchable, and I will be back to normal next week. Or I say that I'm not. I arrive back from here, then I fly out to Madrid straight away. So I'll be back to normal at some point fairly soon. But I still wanted to get involved, do a couple of shows while I was away. So let's start in today's show, shall we? I'm going to start with Kai Havertz. Interesting news yesterday from David Ornstein in his doing his Q&A on The Athletic, where he suggested that Kai Havertz could well be back this season. He said that the recovery is going very, very well, and there is a possibility towards the end of the season, if it continues to go well, that he could be involved. Now, he did flag up that there was lots of ifs involved in that, but it certainly raised an interesting possibility, I think, of Kai Havertz returning before the end of the season, and also whether it would be worth it, I suppose, for Arsenal. It's kind of in that similar territory where with Saka, wasn't it, when the league was looking like it was out of the question for Arsenal. Arsenal had Real Madrid, and lots of people were being very defeative about the fact they had Madrid. And I saw it in the comments on this channel, people saying, just leave him, don't play him, don't bring him back, just get him ready for next season. This season's over. Obviously, he came back, played brilliantly against Madrid. Arsenal smashed Madrid and are in a very good position to go through to the semi-finals. So the season is still very much alive when it comes to the Champions League. So what do you do with Kai Havertz? Marino's been doing fantastically well in his position. Brilliant goal against Madrid as well. And when you look at how the season pans out, I think the final home game of the season is on the 25th of May. And what are we now? Just coming up towards the 10th of April now. So you've still got about 6 weeks to go before the last Premier League game of the season. And then, don't want to get ahead of myself, but the Champions League final is then at the end of May, May the 31st, I think it is. So you've got maybe 7 weeks of the season left if Arsenal were to go all the way to the Champions League final. So if Havertz is going to have any sort of chance, you'd think it would have to basically be that kind of last fortnight. And then would he be, is there really much worth sort of risking in that regard? Because is he going to come back and really hit the ground running? So it's going to be interesting. But, if it would be a boost for the squad. We've seen how much the fact that Saka's come back has lifted the teammates around him. You speak to the Arsenal players, you heard what they've been saying since Saka's come back. It's just given the place a massive lift. Of course it will when your best player comes back. And Kai Havertz, look, he might not be in Bukayo Saka territory, but he's still a very important player for Arsenal. He's still very much liked by the players. And if he comes in and he's in around the squad, then that might give you just the lift you need, especially if you're going into a big Champions League final. He's around the place all the time now. You're seeing him just like you started to see Saka more and more on the touchline and all that sort of stuff as he sort of built up his recovery. We're seeing that with Kai Havertz now. He's on the touchline again against Real Madrid in midweek. So, look, it'd be good to see him back. Absolutely good to see him back. Do I think it'd be a season-defining moment? No, I don't think so, because I think how much of a struggle it might be for him to get up to full speed so quickly, and the fact that Marino is doing well in his position at the moment. But I think it would still be a really important boost for Arsenal, for the players, for everyone, for the fans. So it would be good to see him back, but no risk. The worst thing you want to do is risk his summer, risk his pre-season. If there's any sort of doubt when it comes to Kai Havertz, just make sure he's fine for the summer so he's ready to go again when the new season gets up and running. Right, wow, this is small when I put it up on the screen there. This is a message from Edu yesterday when his gardening leave officially came to an end at Arsenal. Obviously, he's not been around for a long time now since he's made his decision to quit and head off to Marinakis and Nottingham Forest Group, which I'm sure will be announced very soon. Now his gardening leave at Arsenal has come to an end. This is a message he put out yesterday. It's pretty long, but it's worth reading if you haven't read it already. It says, with a heart full of gratitude, today formally I close one of the most meaningful chapters of my professional life. After 5.5 years, my journey officially as sporting director at Arsenal has come to an end. I joined in 2019 as technical director, the challenge of bringing Arsenal, with the mission of bringing Arsenal back where it belongs among football's elite, driving a cultural shift, keep competing for trophies and making Champions League qualification the minimum expectation for a club of Arsenal's size. Later, I had the honour of becoming the first ever sporting director in the club's history, a milestone I will always carry with great pride. Throughout the process of rebuilding, you, the fans, were an essential part of everything. To the supporters, my most sincere thank you. The support, energy and connection we felt every match was simply special. The Emirates became an amplified version of the old Highbury atmosphere. To have experienced this alongside you, I will never forget. To our owners, Stan and Josh Kroenke, the board, Mikel, the players, coaching staff, Per, Claire, all the executive team, the backroom staff, everyone working at Emirates Stadium, especially those who welcomed me so warmly in the director's box. Thank you for these years of collaboration and kindness. It was never easy, but our intense work, united by a true team spirit, made me feel fulfilled throughout these years. If I'm only now sharing this message, it's because I've been on gardening leave in recent months, and out of respect for the club and everyone involved, I prefer to wait until the final official day of my contract to publish this. I wish Arsenal all the best in every success, and I also send my warmest wishes to the new sporting director, Arteta, who now takes on this beautiful role. I'll leave with a peaceful heart and immense pride in what we've built together. Thank you so much, Edu Gaspar. A really nice message there from Edu, who will be taking over in his new role, sort of overseeing the Marinakis football group very soon. Popular guy. Yeah, I think he goes with everyone's sort of best wishes. He played a massive role in transforming Arsenal in recent times, alongside Mikel Arteta. You know, was there highs? Definitely. Was there lows? Definitely. Was there hits, misses in the transfer market? Of course there was. That's going to come with the territory of being a sporting director at any football club. But on the whole, you look at where Arsenal were when he arrived and you look at Arsenal were when he left, and it's impossible to say he did not make an impact and did not do a good job. He did do a good job. He played a key role in helping Arsenal get into where they are now, which is, yes, we've not been title winners yet, which we all want to be, but look, we're one of the best teams in the world right now, as we've just showcased by dismantling Real Madrid, and Edu's played a big role in that as well. So I hope he does well at Nottingham Forest. Not too well, but I hope he does well at Nottingham Forest. And as he said, Andrea Berta is now the guy in charge. He's a guy who's going to be deemed with following on in Edu's footsteps. They're pretty big footsteps to follow in, but I'm sure, fingers crossed, he can get the job done, and we'll start seeing the effects of that come the summer. So that was Edu's leaving message from his role at Arsenal. Just elsewhere, before we move on from this, sort of talking about coaching staff and technical side of things, the coaching staff at Arsenal now all signing new contracts, bringing themselves in line with Mikel Arteta. Arteta obviously signed his a while back. The coaching staff hadn't yet. They were due to expire at the end of the season, but the likes of Cuesta, Molina, Inaki Kana, Albert Stuyvenberg all signing new contracts, which is good for Arteta. He wanted it. He spoke in the past about bringing them all in line with him, really key allies with him and how the club operates. So nice, never really in doubt, but nice for him as well that they can all sort of settle down now with long-term contracts at the club and really continue to try and move the club forward. So yeah, congratulations to all of the coaching staff on their new deals. Right, I've got a question from Aaron here. It says, hey Charles, now with the Champions League semi-final firmly in sight, will Mikel start to make some big rotations in the league and give all the efforts and power now to the Champions League? Obviously, we still have to secure the spot for the Champions League in the league, and there is still the second leg of the quarterfinal to go, but Mikel will surely be measuring the chances of winning the Champions League once and for all. PSG thrashing Villa was just perfect, completely different from what we faced. If we face PSG, who already won the league, I think it might be more difficult than the Real Madrid game. Well, I think it definitely will be more difficult than the Real Madrid game, because at the moment, PSG, for me, they're the two most informed teams in Europe, which is mad when you think how comfortably Arsenal took PSG apart at the Emirates. It was just, they physically dominated them, overpowered them. It was a really good performance by Arsenal. But this PSG team now, the way they're playing, the addition of Kvaratskhelia and him and Doué and Dembele, the movement, the rotation they've got up front. We saw what they did to Liverpool, saw how they dismantled Aston Villa as well. Look, it's a big game to come at Villa Park in that second leg, and everyone will be watching that. Villa will be a tough tough there. It's going to be a raucous atmosphere, but that goal by Mendes in injury time, massive in terms of the tie for that one. And you would certainly put PSG as massive favourites to go through. In terms of what Arteta's going to do now, I think it's really interesting that, what he's going to do against Brentford. I mean, there's some big decisions to make in terms of that Real Madrid tie. I think you've got to take that Real Madrid tie into account now when you're selecting your side against Brentford. Now, you don't want to go really totally weak. You're not going to leave everyone out, of course you're not. But I think there has to be some rotation with that game in mind. Trossard didn't start against Madrid, probably won't start in Madrid. I think he probably starts against Brentford. Ben White, I think you've got to bring on, rest Timber. Definitely rest Timber. Kind of do what he did against Everton. That sort of team that we saw against Everton, I think will be the team that we see line up against Brentford. It's a team that could still win that game against Brentford, no doubt about it. But I think it also protects some key players. Ethan Nwaneri coming in maybe for Bukayo Saka. That was Saka's first start in a long, long time. Do you want to start him again against Brentford in a few days later? I don't think so. So I think Ethan Nwaneri will probably come in for that one. You might well see Raheem Sterling again for Gabriel Martinelli, Ben White at right back, Trossard up top. I just think that side we saw against Everton will probably be similar to what we see against Brentford. Jorginho for Thomas Partey, for example. It is Saturday and then the game's on Wednesday, so you have an extra day this week. It's not Saturday, Tuesday, but you've got to take travel into account and going over to Madrid as well. So I think he'll definitely make changes. I think he has to. The season's on the line next week against Madrid. Yes, Arsenal in a fantastic position. That 3-0 gives us a sort of breathing space none of us expected going over for that second leg, but it's not over. It is only half time. Madrid, we've seen time and time again come back from the dead in the Champions League. So you cannot think that this tie is over. Arteta will certainly not think the tie is over. The players won't think it. We heard him talking immediately after full time last week. So it's crucial that that they are ready to go, because they're going to face a real cauldron at the Bernabeu on Wednesday, and they need to be ready for that. So I think he'll rest legs, Aaron, in response to your question previously. Is it this one? I think there'll definitely be rotation. He'll definitely be thinking about that. But he won't be ready to chuck the Premier League away. He's not going to ham Brentford to win. I just think it'll be very similar to what we saw against Everton last weekend. Some more pre-season news now, just announced by Arsenal. I've got to say, I'm a little bit worried about this pre-season. The games are good, but the teams are a little bit of a worry about who Arsenal are playing. So we knew about the North London derby in Hong Kong, which is at the end of July 31st, maybe, I think it is. But now Arsenal have announced the 2 games that they're playing in Singapore. And as expected, Newcastle is one of them. They're also playing against AC Milan. So it starts off AC Milan on Wednesday, 23rd of July. Then it's Newcastle on the 27th. Then Arsenal go to Hong Kong, where they're going to play Spurs on the 31st. Now, I went to the Singapore tour for the last one. Saw Arsenal, Atletico Madrid, I think it was. I can't remember who the other team they played. But it was a great tour. Singapore was a brilliant city. The stadium was great. And it was a lot of fun. So this will be a really good tour, no doubt about it. I'm just worried about those teams. We know the rivalry between Arsenal and Newcastle that has built up. There's no love lost there between players, between the coaching staff. The sort of game that tends to occur when Arsenal play Newcastle. I know this is pre-season, so there's very different. You're not caught up by the Premier League and the fact that points are on offer, but it's still a rivalry between two teams who don't really like each other. So that kind of worries me in terms of what sort of game we might see, how physical it might be. And then Arsenal go and play Tottenham a few days later in a North London derby, which again, yes, it's not a Premier League game. It's not technically a competitive game, but it's a North London derby. No one's going to want to lose that game. And it's going to be very competitive, very physical. The one thing you don't want in pre-season is injuries. You want competitiveness, and you'll definitely get it in these games. But as soon as I saw these fixtures out, I was just like, do we really need that? Do we need that? Do we need them that competitive, that physical, which I think they probably will be? These players need to be wrapped up in cotton wool and be fine. The last thing we want after a season like we've just had is more injuries. And maybe that's me just being a little bit pessimistic. But it does worry me a bit. By all means, play the likes of AC Milan and teams like that. But those really ultra physical games with an extra little bit of bite and a little bit of edge and a little bit of nastiness, I think those are the sort of matches you want to avoid in pre-season, aren't you? So fingers crossed everyone comes through. It's going to be a good pre-season anyway, entertaining, big games. So looking forward to that. But yeah, a little bit worried about the teams that Arsenal are going to be facing. And just before we wrap this one up, here's one from Vet Parrow. He said, "Hi Charles, something I keep thinking about is how much benefit we are going to get next season from the accidents of this season. Unearthing Lewis Skelly and Ranieri compared to the amount of minutes I thought they would play at the start of the season. They are now fully fledged squad members. I know Mourinho hasn't quite worked as a left 8, but this has to increase his threat in the box for next season. Now he just needs to prove himself in things we expected him to be good at. Kivior's end of the season might mean we keep him, but if we don't, we won't be selling him on for a Rob Holding fee. Now just need a few of the loans to finish well." Yeah, you're right. There's definitely some things that Arsenal can take into next season. I don't really want to be thinking about next season now, though. If you see what I mean, I'm still very much focused on finishing this season well. There's still a massive chance of glory for Arsenal this season. That needs to be the focus. But you're right. I think Lewis Skelly and Ranieri, no one expected them to get the sort of minutes that they've got this season. And, next season, as you point out, they are absolutely going to be starting the season as fully fledged, crucial members of this squad. So that's two positions there where you don't need to strengthen, where maybe, we've always been talking about getting competition for Saka and cover for Guy Saka. We don't need to worry about that now. Thanks to Ethan Ranieri. Don't need to worry about it. We don't need to be scrambling around for another left back like we tend to always do, because we've suddenly unearthed arguably the best left back in England now in Miles Lewis Skelly, who is unbelievable against Real Madrid. And you're right about Kivior. Wasn't getting any minutes, value plummeting now suddenly, because he's going to play a key role between now and the end of the season. And if Arsenal do end up selling him, which I think there's probably a good chance this summer, that value is going to be protected by these big performances in a high-profile game. So you're right. Some good things to take into next season. Mourinho as well. He's transformed how he's probably viewed at Arsenal with this run he's had at centre-forward, which is a bonus for him. So definite positives, but let's worry about next season. Let's continue to focus on this season, shall we? Because as I said, there is a chance, a real moment of glory still for Arsenal to take something out of a season that has been pretty difficult and pretty hard watch for us up to now. And that's it from me, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Appreciate your time. As always, do have a good end to your weekend. Mikel Arteta's press conference is coming a little bit later, so it'll be interesting to see what he has to say about that game against Brentford. That's 1 p.m. UK time. That press conference will be starting. So until next time, everyone, speak soon. Enjoy your day. Enjoy the start to your weekend. Bye-bye.